My name's Deputy Inspector General of Police, Dr. Shehu, PSC. To talk about PRAWA, Prisoners Rehabilitation and Welfare Action, we have a very, very good rapport, good understanding, and good synergy between the police and PRAWA for many years. It is an institution that concerns primarily on respect of dignity and human rights, which the police are supposed to be part of it. And also capacity building to the police to enable them to perform effectively and efficiently in conjunction with the fundamental respect to the fundamental human rights as enshrined into the Nigerian constitutions of 1999. It's very, very beneficial, and at the same time in building capacity and enabling the police officers to perform credibly when they go out to discharge their duties. The police is an organization that deals with all kinds of human beings. When they come across a police officer, they deserve to be respected by police in ensuring not only their security and safety, but also in respecting their dignity and human rights. So in a nutshell, the training and retraining we are getting from the PRAWA is to enable us have police that will function and discharge their duties in a most standard and acceptable manner by members of the public. At this juncture, I want to say kudos. Welcome to the Nigeria Police Force online training.
Thank you for signing on this particular module, which is focusing on police checkpoint. Again, this is a very, very, very important module that I believe that every officer should really attend this particular training. Now, what is our lesson objective here? We want to promote greater understanding of the application of human rights in relation to operations of the police at checkpoints, okay? Expected outcome is that we expect you that have signed on to this course now to be able to improve your knowledge and in terms of the guidelines that promote good practices in relation to your checkpoints, your operation as police officers at checkpoints. And as you always know, I will always emphasize that it's not only about having an improved knowledge about this, but in action, your behavior must change, should change in relation to how you begin to apply all these things that you are learning. Checkpoints, as we know, are quite important in maintaining public safety and deterring criminals. I think we said that earlier. But checkpoints must not inconvenience nor intimidate citizens. Please underscore this. The fact that you have mounting a checkpoint must not mean that the citizens should be intimidated or it should be inconveniencing. So the location of the checkpoints needs to be put into consideration. This needs to consider this point I'm making here. And this does not then mean that you begin to put obstructions or checkpoints at places that are not approved or at points that will be very difficult to for the commuters. Okay? So it's what checkpoint is supposed to provide is to give the users of the road a greater sense of safety and security, but not where they dread those roads because of your checkpoints. Please, let's bear this in mind. To remain legitimate and in relation to how we are seen, and here I mean in relation to how police officers are seen by the general public, I want us to ensure that the following guidelines are actually adopted. We have to also make sure that the checkpoints must be authorized. It must be authorized. You don't just on your own decide to just mount checkpoints. So what are those things that we should consider? The staffing is first. This must be staffed by uniformed personnel in complete uniform. Remember what we had said earlier about your dressing and all that. So it still comes to be relevant here. It has to be complete uniform. They must have your name tag and the ID card, and this must be very visible. The checkpoint must also be led by an officer who is at least of the rank of an inspector. We also know that there are sometimes we have civilian volunteers around, we have neighborhood watch and all the rest around environment. And the key thing here is that if this is a police checkpoint, it needs to be led by an officer who is at least of the rank of an inspector. And the officer must be aware of these guidelines. I will tell you, I have seen instances where you have young people, young boys, civilians, that are being asked at the official police checkpoint, are being asked to do something. Maybe go and collect this from this driver, go and do this. I think this is not right. So we must make sure that the police is seen to be in control of these checkpoints and that these police officers are discharging their duty very professionally. Now, if there be instance whereby some civilians have been recruited for any kind of assignment that around this, or to support your operations of the force of the officers at the checkpoint, these civilians should be clearly identified, and I would say properly trained, and there should be a clear way of identifying them. So this is important. The point I'm making here is that for police checkpoints, the control command and the command structure and hierarchy in that checkpoint must be clearly someone who is of a rank not less than inspector's rank. And I would add that the person should also be knowledgeable in the issues that we are discussing here. Okay, so it shouldn't be confusing to anybody that this checkpoint is manned by the police. That's the point I'm making here. Okay, let's continue. Now, I've already told you that everything that is supposed to be used, equipment and that is authorized equipment that are supposed to be used, should be used by the officers. Please, on no occasion should you have someone who has not been trained, who is not a police officer, to handle any of the authorized equipment that you are using during this checkpoints, at the checkpoints. Now, it is also only officially police-marked vehicles that should be used in terms of establishing a mobile checkpoint. Let me repeat it again. Do not use civilian vehicles that are not marked police vehicles because again, people will get confused. They will not know whether it's the armed robbers operating in that site. That's why it is very important to have a way of displaying that you are the police officers and that you are authorized to take on the position you are taking. Okay? Remember the point we made earlier about being courteous. The issue of being courteous to passengers, to motorists, to passerbys must also apply here. So the conduct at the checkpoint in terms of searchings, seizures, arrests and all that must also be done within utilizing the laid down rules, and it must be very civil. Very civil. Again, there must be reason. You don't just pick people and say take them to your station for no just reason. There must be a very clear reason for any arrest that it needs to be made. There must be a very clear reason for any seizure that it needs to be made. Now, I am going to give you some suggestions, and I know that you can also try this out by yourself. So if I am to address and I say, good morning, sir. This is a police checkpoint. Please bear with us a little bit in terms of there is a slight inconveniences. And then if there's anything you want, you can say, can you give me this? Can you give me that? Okay, I would like to see so. Please, ma. Please, sir. Can I see this? Never force motorists to open their vehicle trunk or compartment. Never force them. If there is any reason for suspicion that is on a reasonable ground, then you will request them to do the needful. Okay? You would, again, don't force any motorist, don't beat up anybody, don't ask, just very politely make the request that you want to make. And if, for example, there is any reason why that request is not granted, then you will not know what is the next step. But on no occasion should violence be inflicted. Again, all the things we had learned in the model dealing with issue of use of force, bear that also in mind. So in this regard, you are using good language, you are using very polite languages, and you are not inflicting any force. So your actions must be very reasonable. Now, the use of warning shots is strictly prohibited. Okay? And the reason for this is you want to avoid unnecessary accidental deaths or injuries or damage, okay, during such action in terms of the checkpoint. Megaphones or police siren shall be used instead. Don't forget that whatever thing you do at this point, the whole concept of proportionality, legality, accountability, necessity is important. So if you make open fire on a personnel that is manning the checkpoint, then reasonable force can be applied to overcome the suspect's aggression. But so whatever action you take that requires force must be reasonable, and it must follow laid down procedure. Now, the same thing when we talk about the issue of search. When these searches are being made at checkpoints, there are also clear guidelines. So searches made at checkpoint shall be limited to visual searches, and neither the vehicle nor the occupants shall be subjected to physical search or requiring the passengers to alert from the vehicle. But we know we do this all the time. We see it. But that's not right. Unless there is a reasonable ground why you think there is a need for an extensive search, then this should be carried out. And you will see clearly what is being said here, that this should be allowed only if the officer conducting that search have reasonable ground to suspect that they would find evidence pertaining to a commission of a crime inside that vehicle. So please bear this in mind. Remember also, you don't have sufficient time to say, I'm going to get warrant to be able to do search if in such a situation. So the question here is that what is it that is important that you need to do and it need to be done following the laid down principles. So please, this point is so clear because we know that daily officers are violating it. We know. So that's why you should always look at these things and understand what is the reasonable ground that you have. Now, let me deal with another point. Persons stopped during a checkpoint are not required and must not be forced to answer any question posed during spot checks. So if there's a failure to respond to an officer's inquiry or not, it's not a sufficient ground to say, because you did not answer my question, okay, I'm arresting you. No. So a person's failure or refusal to respond to your question may actually provide sufficient justification for you to begin to look for additional information, additional investigation. So please, don't say, I asked you, give me ID card. You didn't give me ID card. Then follow me to the station. So unless there are other serious grounds, other reasonable grounds, for you to think that this ID card is important, it has something to do with the commission of a crime or something else, the team lead must properly orient the search team and the security team. They must properly orient them. Because sometimes when you look at these things, guidelines we are talking about, and you look at what is happening outside there at checkpoints, you will see they actually are variants. So the question is, all that we are learning here, how are we using it? Let me also focus on further things. So both the police and the civilian components at the checkpoint operation must submit themselves to actually dealing with the issue of reports after the operation. But don't forget, it is the lead that has complete responsibility. Do you remember the point about accountability? So every action you take, whether it's at the point, it's the same thing, even at the checkpoint, should also be open for oversight, open to for you to account for in case there is something that comes up. But you must also really submit your reports. So in the conduct of police checkpoints, all police officers must promote and protect human rights. You must also respect the right of persons to get their dignity. You must also respect the right of persons both to the issue relating to privacy. You must also respect the right of persons in relation to freedom of movement. Okay? So the issue about checkpoint is so critical. Let me just mention that in the course of what we have been dealing with, that progressively every model we have discussed continues to be relevant even as we go on. So the points that the issues that you learned in terms of the uniform, wearing of uniform and vehicle branding and the vehicle, as well as the things you learned in, relating to the language, how you speak to citizens, are also things that you will also apply even at checkpoints. The same way, the issues relating to the use of force, the issues relating to your understanding of the plan principle, and again I repeat, the plan principle meaning P for proportionality, L for legality, A for accountability, N for necessity. All that principle, even at checkpoint, you will apply them. Okay? So reflect on what we have discussed and take on your exercises on this module, and I know that if you are able to go out there and apply this, what you have just learned under this module, you'll be a very, very successful police officer. Thank you.